Alright guys, Friday, November the 20th, and just coming up to about 4 p.m. Beautiful day outside today, about plus 15 degrees Celsius, and that looks to be the end of it. We're dropping down to, I think, a high tomorrow of 4 degrees Celsius, so the garage door will definitely be shut tomorrow, so we'll enjoy it while we can. Anyway, I thought I would just do a really quick update on the project, and we'll talk a little bit about the carbs and a little bit about the exhaust. Alright guys, during the last video I'd mentioned that I was going to try and dig the exhaust out. Well, I've done that as part of my garage cleaning and organization. So I've just got it sitting under the car, and I was just kind of playing around with it, doing a rough kind of fit up of it yesterday and trying to figure out what parts I needed as far as installation are concerned. Alright, so this exhaust was never on this car, and there's no fitting kit with it, and there are no instructions to fit it, so it's going to be a bit of a custom installation. So I'm trying to get my mind around how I'm going to do that, and in the process I've started sort of ordering and collecting parts to be able to do that. So on the table here behind me I've got some of the original parts that came off one of the other exhausts that were installed on one of the other cars that I've owned. So just some brackets and some bushings I may be able to utilize here. These are the original manifold nuts, and we call these footballs for the actual car. They haven't been installed yet, so they'll have to actually go on the car eventually when that's fully fitted up. So we just dug those up in order to clean them up. A few other kind of brackets that came off the car. This was on the TR250 at one point. Not sure where it was, but we won't probably be utilizing that again. Maybe that piece of metal might come in handy. We'll see. This is a stock exhaust bracket for a car running I think it's for a J-type overdrive. This is an A-type overdrive on the 250, so I don't know if this is applicable or not, but somehow I just thought I'd drag it out just in case we might happen to need it. So I have gone ahead and ordered a few parts. These are a rubber type bushing, and I was thinking of using these towards the rear of the car as a sort of an insulator. I'll show you where I mean. And they're adjustable. You can raise or lower it, and I'll talk a little bit about that more in a second. But we're thinking of using this mounting point here and using that isolator kind of like that with a bolt through it and some washers. So it isn't intended as an exhaust mount, probably not intended in that sort of fashion, but I think we can make it work. So I've ordered those to play with. I've ordered this mega clamp from Walker, and this part number was supplied by Tom Smith off of one of the forums, and I'd ordered this off of Amazon and received it today. So the intent for this clamp is to fit there where this collector joins to the header. So it's a stepped piece, so that would probably go something like that. So we've got that exhaust joint figured out. I'll let the garbage recycling truck go by and I'll come back. So one of the other bits I picked up just for fun, picked this up at a local store, is just this hang it all kit, which is a universal exhaust hanger system, as it says on the box, and it comes with this sort of traditional style strap. I call it sort of conveyor belt type material, and a couple of different hangers and some fasteners. So we may be able to put that to good use at some point, so I thought I would just pick that up to have it if I need it. And I've got a little bit of just a regular sort of steel strap if I need to make some more hangers kind of like that. I've got more steel that I can make those out of. So I do have some components to be able to sort of try to fabricate something to hang that exhaust. So we will play around with that over the next few days and see what we can come up with. One of the things that I have to think about when I'm designing this exhaust installation kit is the fact that the body tub is not on the chassis. And the problem is I'm not actually sure about the stick out. I mean, I want these to stick out you know, a little bit from the rear of the car. I'm not sure if those tabs are actually mounted correctly for a TR250. I believe this is for a TR6. So the stick out might be wrong according to where those tabs are welded to pick up the stock location. So that might be one issue, is that I don't have the body tub on to be able to check that. The other issue is height. So I won't know exactly. I want to bring these exhaust tips up as close to the bottom of the body tub as possible, with giving enough clearance for heat, etc. And I obviously don't want it to be rubbing or touching the bottom of the body tub. So that's why I bought those black bushings over here that we just talked about, these double suspension or whatever they're called. is that they're easily adjustable. I can drop these down. If this is the top bolt, I can start here and then I can drop it down progressively as need be in order to bring the exhaust down a little bit lower. So I'm not so concerned about the height, it's more the stick out of the exhaust. Alright, the last thing I wanted to talk about before we move on to the carburetor discussion is what we're going to do as far as the mid pipes for these pipes, because you see that I've got a 2 to 3 foot section of pipes that are missing. So traditionally this car, the TR250 and the early TR6 up to 72 used to have a single exhaust pipe all the way back to the back, and then in 73 they went to a dual pipe. So I've obviously gone to a dual pipe setup here, and I'm missing the intermediate pipes they call them, so I've actually ordered those from British Parts Northwest. So they are on the way. With this current COVID situation, things are taking a lot longer to be delivered than normal, so I don't expect to see those pipes probably for at least a week and a half to 2 weeks. So that's going to put a bit of a stop on my fabrication of the exhaust, although I can probably sort of work on the hangers a little bit. I'm not going to be able to complete the exhaust until I get those intermediate pipes from British Parts Northwest. So those are going to put me at a hard stop at some point. Alright, let's have a quick discussion about the carburetors. So as I mentioned in the previous video, one of the reasons I put the carbs on the car was to figure out the linkages and to figure out what parts I might require as far as getting these up and running and getting the car started. So I've made a list of parts that I've ordered. I've ordered $333 Canadian worth of parts for these Webers, and trust me, it's not a lot of stuff. Weber parts are extremely expensive. I didn't even order any extra jets yet. I'm just going to run with the current setup that's in the car until we can get things sorted out. I'm sure these were going to need to be tuned, but as I'd mentioned in the previous video, the previous owner did not run these cars with air horns. So I've ordered some air horns that are going to fit within these filters. And as mentioned previously as well, I don't have a lot of space to work with. So we've got some short ram horns, velocity stacks, whatever you want to call them. They're going to fit within these filters. So that's number one. So I've got those coming. All right, the other parts I've ordered for these carbs involve fuel delivery. So if you recall, I was not happy with the fuel rail that came on this car. It was very rudimentary and very homemade. So we've gone ahead and we've purchased the proper fittings for the fuel rail on the top of the carbs. So we've got that coming along with the fuel line. So we'll get the fuel delivery sorted out to these carbs. These carburetors are soft mounted, so they have a little O-ring here in between the manifold and the carbs. So these ones looked a little suspect when I took them off the car. So I've gone ahead and I've ordered new soft mounts. And the new soft mounts come with new Thackeray washers, which allow you to set these carbs up properly as far as mounting is concerned. So we have new soft mounts and new hardware to install the carbs to the intake manifolds. And last but not least, we'll talk about the throttle linkage a little bit. I actually didn't order anything new as far as the throttle linkage is concerned. I'm sort of holding off on that. I had mentioned in the previous video that I'd probably get the car up and running on this current throttle linkage. I have investigated on what I would need to buy in order to improve on this. Now, one thing I do have up in the bins here on top of the shelf is a set of DCOE 40s. I think they're DCOE 42s for my 1960 Triumph TR3. And it had some more current and better looking linkage. So I may actually investigate looking at that and maybe robbing some parts from that. We can always replace that if we end up putting the 42s back on the 60 TR3A. So we'll have a look at robbing some parts from the 60 TR3A before we go ahead and buy new parts. So that is the update on the carburetor and exhaust section of this project. And as you can see, waiting for parts is going to slow me down a little bit. So what do I do in the meantime? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through the front end now, and I'm going to start torquing fasteners up, adding cotter pins, for example. So here I've got this cotter pin just sitting here waiting for this fastener to be torqued. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to go through the front end, fix what needs to be fixed, torque what needs to be torqued. I'm going to mark it with a paint marker, so we know that it's been torqued to the appropriate value. So we're ready to go when we're going to be ready to put the body on at some point fairly soon, hopefully. So we'll know that all those fasteners are torqued 100%, and I can sleep at night. Some of you have noticed the radiator protection shield and the sway bar still kicking around on the ground, so I still haven't got my head around that. I still haven't ordered new parts for that, so that's something that needs to be done as well. So we'll have to figure that out in the near future before the body goes on. So that is another little project we can work on. So one of the things I'm not extremely happy with, that I think that could be better, is the paint in the engine bay. I did get very good coverage in the engine bay when I sprayed it. So I think that's something that I can do better. So I think we're going to break down and we're going to scuff up the paint in the engine bay and repaint that. We'll maybe do a little bit of body work on the engine bay as well. Some spots that I'm not happy with or spots that I missed. So that's going to be another little project to be able to do. Now, obviously with the weather changing and getting colder, I need to be about 65 degrees Fahrenheit at a minimum in the garage to do any painting. So we're going to have to try to use our kerosene burner down there to maybe heat the garage up and get it warm enough to paint out here. And it is the engine bay, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be better than what it is. So we'll probably break down and do that project. So we'll probably start sanding on that in the next few weeks as well, and getting that ready for another coat of paint. So what's that story about the cricket and the ant? And the cricket not being prepared for winter? Well, that's kind of the way I feel with this body tub right now. So not having the engine bay painted at this point puts kind of a hard stop on this project after the chassis is finished completely and the engine has been started and broken in. I would expect that that should all be done, and I hate to put dates on things, but let's say that's done by the end of December. So I've got quite a few more months of winter to go after the end of December, and at that point the plan was to actually put the body tub on the chassis. Of course, if the engine bay is not painted, I can't do that. So I need to get the engine bay painted in order to mate the chassis and the body tub together, so I can continue on with the project January, February, March, April, until I can get the garage doors open again and we can get into spring. So, you know, that would allow me to, once I get the engine bay painted, I can start adding the ancillaries into the engine bay, like the brake booster and the clutch master and the wiring harness and the pedal box, etc., etc. I can start working on the interior and getting the heater in and the dash and the heater hoses and wiring harness and all that kind of stuff in the actual passenger compartment. So that's kind of the intent, and that's where I'm at, is I need to get the body tub to that stage where I can actually mate it to the chassis, get it bolted down, so we can start working on the rest of the finishes for this car. So hopefully that makes sense to you, and that's the direction we're going in. So there's your update. It's a little longer than I anticipated, but that is the update.